BONIFACE NDIRANGU.
Yes.
He is the chairman of the Addictions Prevention and Rehabilitation Association of Kenya. That's a long name. How do you shorten it?
APRAK.
Oh, there you go. APRAK.
Yes.
Welcome, Boniface.
Thank you very much.
Welcome to Kenya's biggest conversation, the Situation Room. How do you feel occupying the hot seat?
Wow. I've been watching you guys for some time. I enjoy this show very much. Huh? So it is, I don't know how to put it, but it is a nice feeling. And thank you for welcoming me very much.
Karibu.
Yeah. I like the Kenyan by choice. Yeah. And the African proverbs, you know?
Kenyan by choice. Yes. Give her a belated happy birthday. She just celebrated her birthday.
When was this?
She just turned 26.
Oh, yeah? Happy birthday.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah. I won't ask how old.
Oh, you can.
Yeah, really?
I don't know that I'll answer.
Boniface.
Yes.
So what does APRAK do? The Addictions Prevention and Rehabilitation Association of Kenya.
Thank you very much, Eric. So for some time, I can give some background.
Yes.
Background to why we set up APRAK. So for a long time, we've had a series since 2001 when the government thought that we have a problem and we need to do something about this. They set up an agency in the Ministry of, I think that was Moi then. And he thought, hey, wait a minute. We hear people drinking quite a bit in Central Province, in Rift Valley. We need to set up something. So they set up a small agency within his office of the president. That's where Kaguthi became the first national coordinator. And he ran a campaign against drug abuse for the next 3 or 4 years. And very soon, Kibaki took over. And then we had a lady who took over for 4 years, and a series of them. So over time, we've had a different kind of leadership within the National Authority for the Campaign Against Drug Abuse. And as a people who are in the industry and who are addiction counselors and who run rehabilitation centers, we thought we should come together and stabilize the shifts of leadership. That is how we came together with the support of NACADAS too, to do a visioning process and bring these professionals together to set an agenda that is outside the realm of the individual treatment centers, but supportive of the structural components that we can voice our concerns together. Yeah, that's how we formed the association. About 3 years old now.
So, forming the association was not just because it was said form something, but then was there also the realization that there was a problem?
Oh, yes.
Okay.
Yes. There was a genuine need to have a voice of seasoned people, just like you have seasoned journalists here, seasoned people who have been in the field, who are in the field, who can tap down any or provide insights into what's going on in the field. Especially, NACADA has leaders, and we have different. Like now, we are moving into a new dispensation. So the next person who is elected will probably select somebody they know are comfortable with. You still need professionals in that field to guide and to stable that ship. Yeah. So that was what informed it more. The fact that we also moved into county government's leadership, and we thought we needed to have a national body that can also help with the county governments because health is a devolved function. As a national government, as a national body, we are able to guide and support county governments or individuals within counties to set up treatment centers.
Right.
Yeah, in a way that is accepted.
So what are we looking at today?
Yes.
And I ask this question because, I think a day doesn't go by when we're reading stories about certain things that have happened to certain people who behaved in a certain way, having been under the influence in one, whether it's an accident on the road, whether it is mis or maltreatment of a family member, and then have been said to be under the influence of alcohol and drugs. It's like a hamster on a wheel. We just keep going and going and going. What is the state of things right now? If we could do an overview of the country in terms of drug abuse?
Yes, that's a very good question. Just somebody described me as doing the work of Sisyphus. It's a guy who pulls this thing up the hill, and and you get to the top of the hill, it comes
back
traveling
down.
Down,
Yeah,
yeah.
that's the kind of work we do.
Yeah.
Yes, and we still have to do it because generations after generations will find people whose coping skills. Now that goes deep down to definition of what addiction is. And it's really a way in which people are unable to cope, then uses outside substances
To cope.
to cope.
Right.
Yeah. So you'll find hata unasikia like that one you've just asked you, a lot of people alienda in Swahili we say alienda kumkunyia moja ndio akuje
Ya kuja mpashe.
ndio mpashe habari because he wouldn't say it in black and white. So the situation right now is on the extreme side, mainly because of the crisis that we're going through in two ways. Once we've just gone through the COVID crisis. And for sure that was a crisis on everyone. Then on top of that, now we're going through an economic crisis. And inability to cope, the cost of things going up, most people, especially in the slums, you will find choosing to close down on the reality by blocking, by using substances and by drinking. So find quite a bit of the population that takes that route. So at this time, Nakada did the last research and found that 400,000 are in dire need. Yeah, 400,000 people in dire need of immediate admission into rehabilitation centers. 400,000. That is the last stage of alcoholism.
What's our
We have some-
capacity for rehabilitation centers?
we have only a capacity of 10,000 across all the treatment centers that I'm the chairperson, and the others, because we've calculated the bed capacity, there's only 10,000 beds.
And we have
10,000.
400,000
400. So it's
in
one.
dire need. That
in
means
dire
they
need.
urgently need to get
Yes.
into a rehab
Yes.
today.
Yes. I walk around and I can see a person who needs it. Yeah, a lot of times for an untrained eye, you will think that this person is probably malnourished or is unwell, and a trained person is able to pick up on this
So
person.
hold on a
needs-
minute. We've got people who are functioning in their normal capacity, work, school, etc., who would be in need of help,
Yes.
who need to be admitted
Yes.
because they are addicts and they're abusing.
Yes.
But because of what then, apart from the scarcity now in terms of attention medically, what else would be the reasons as to why then this help is not being sought? I mean, from what you've seen, is there denial? Is there denial that maybe these individuals have an issue, or I'm all right, I have a drink on a Friday kind of thing, and it could be more than that?
Yes, I think mostly it's because like this 390,000 that are missing out, and it's not even 390,000 because even the 10,000 capacity, we are not at full capacity. It's just the structures around getting them to get the help they need. So one, treatment is very expensive. Yeah, rehabilitation is very expensive. The costs of it are very expensive. We
Why
need
is it
to really-
expensive?
Yeah.
Why is it expensive?
Yeah, a good question. So treatment centers are run in small, almost like homes of about 15 to 20 people. When there are very many, if it's very huge, and this is for therapeutic reasons. It's almost like they reset up the family structure in a home setting where a lot of things are taught, retaught, yeah, in a structured environment. So the treatment of would entail. The costs in our treatment centers are this: the rent of the house. So depending on the place, if you come to our treatment center in Diani, for example, the rent of that house is about 150,000. So that's one cost. The doctor who comes to see people there, the psychologist who come, it's a team. There's a chef, there's food. So all these costs, if you bring them together, would come on average in many treatment centers about 200 at the very low, 300. Yeah, and at the very high, about 800, 1,000,
A month.
a million. So for
Per
a
month.
group, yeah, I mean
Per month.
Per month, that's per month.
$1 million shillings
Oh yes,
per individual.
No.
The cost of running the
The
center.
cost of
Run the
running the
center.
center.
Okay.
That
So
includes
the-
the charges for the doctors and the
Yes,
professionals who come
yes, Yes.
Okay.
So that now, if you have a small treatment setting, the economies of scale really. Now, a big school with 1,000 people, you can set up very good standards, and provide lower rates.
in. Yeah.
Yeah, but in a small team of about 15, 20 people, now the cost per head becomes very expensive.
Okay.
Yeah, and if you've ever run, I'm sure MCT, you must be running a house, a house of about 5 to 7 people. You'll spend quite a bit in terms of food, no? Yes. Before you even move to taking care of other things like counseling services, individual therapy sessions, all this cost. Yeah.
These centers that we speak of,
Yes.
how many of them are government-owned and how many are actually private entities?
Yes. So private entities constitute almost 95 to 98% of all the treatment centers available. Governments and county governments really need to style up, to set up low-cost treatment centers that can support this. You need to even just turn some of the health centers into rehabilitation centers. Yeah?
Let me ask the question that's at the foremost of my mind.
Yeah.
It's a three-pronged question. One, do you have a program that reaches out to schools and institutions
Yes.
of learning? When I say schools, starting from primary to secondary to colleges and universities,
Yes.
you do.
Yes.
Okay, and how effective is it?
Oh yeah, I think that is one good area where NACADA does a lot of good job with. Yeah? They have this consultants, number of consultants that they have listed as prevention program. They even did a whole protocols on how to go about the prevention. It's a whole science around addictions and how to prevent in the schools, in a school-based place. So they have these experts that you can call in, the schools call, and these experts are dispatched to these places. So sometimes the schools are the ones who pay mostly, or sometimes NACADA pays for that. So the prevention component is there, but it's still not sufficient to cover the number of schools.
You see why I asked the question?
Yes.
Is because, one, if you're talking about addiction, the point at which people acquire the traits that eventually become an addiction tends to be at an earlier age.
Yes.
And it's school-going age children. Some start in primary, small number. Secondary school is where it's proliferated. By the time people get to colleges, it's now considered, it's fully blown. So, second question. What structure do you have in place for working with the following groups of people? Religious organizations, that's one. Two, organizations that deal with large numbers of people like, say, KOTU, Kenya Association of Manufacturers, Federation of Kenya Employers. Why I ask is because reaching individuals is a lot easier if you do it within a structured organization that caters for their needs. Because drug addiction, drug use, drug abuse is not just some garden variety issue in Kenya. It's become a problem.
It is.
And a big problem.
Yes, it is.
So, if it is not addressed, or if it's not acknowledged by groupings and organizations that have an opportunity to do something about it, then it will continue getting worse. So, back to my question again. What work do you have in place? What structures do you have in place to work with these organizations?
Very deep, City. That's a very good question, you know. Sometimes I also like to go back, Kidogo, just to show you how important that your question is, because I personally, I developed a problem myself. One of the reasons I'm in this field is because next year I'll be 20 years clean. But the first 10 years of my after in university, and then 5 years at work, I developed a serious addiction problem. So sometimes I like to look back and what really happened. Why did I start to use? What led to this? Yeah, because I had every reason not to. I come from the streets. I come from the ghettos. I went through Starehe Boys Center. I joined the university. I'm playing for the national team. I look like I am a young man who is going places, you know, especially where we come from. things were really tough. You know, coming from Eastland, Jericho, Makadara, that side, playing football. Going to study, it started to look like I'm really on the upside.
You were on the upside.
Yeah. Then all of a sudden, I started to drink. And soon, start to smoke too. And very soon, I'm wajakoyaing also. So within a short while,
So you took it all.
yes, I did. And within a
Alikuwa member.
nikawa member. So within a very short time, I am in the whole thing, and within a short time, I'm using heroin and cocaine.
This is when you were still in university.
Yes, my last.
But it didn't start with heroin.
It did not. It's progressive.
What did it start with? Was it cigarettes or was it alcohol?
It starts actually now. This starts with pressure, peer pressure, for me. So with a person I kind of
Looked up to?
looked up to. He was a better soccer player than I was, and I really wanted to be and do what he does. So this one person gave me almost every drug that I ever tried. The first cigarette puff I had was him. I was only informed too. The first beer I had at Jockey's Club at Hilton, it was him who took me. And you know, for a ghetto boy, just all of a
taken to
sudden,
Hilton.
yes,
Aye, my friend.
it's too much pressure, man. Yeah. So that's how we started, and those are now where the interventions need to be. How can we replace that with better pressure?
Sure. So
Yeah.
do you think that that's what's happening right now? Just think about it, because I often say that if you're trying to look at solving a problem, you really need to look at how fast, widespread, and how deep it really is. So do you think, like today, that there are many more younger boys and girls, younger men and women, who are being affected at the school age than that need to be targeted? So that's the first part of the question. And if you were not offered a cigarette at that age, do you think that your addiction then, or the abuse of drugs and alcohol, would have gotten to the level that it did, or even at all? If you had not been introduced at that age, would you then have discovered it, you know, like other people later on, and then had, you know,
Now
a better
right.
relationship?
You're talking about the solutions now, and that's really cool, because those are the solutions now. How do we structure support programs for that generation? Positive influence. This professor, if he had come, he's a professor for adolescents, and he's picked out on how to set up systemic support systems that positively engages young people, and keeps their energy and positively engaged through sports, dance, spoken word, ecotherapy, anything that is structured. Even church, like you see, majority of the young people who really go towards or lean towards the church or leans toward sports minimize the exposure. So those the positive engagement and delayed start of use can be a very good, important step towards reducing the chances of young people getting involved. Or the science behind this is, if you invest $1 in prevention programs through those positive things that we're talking about for that age group, you will be saving about $100 in terms of treatment and rehabilitation and the cost of addiction, the total cost of addiction to the economy. So the earlier we invest in our young generation, between the age of 9 and 14, and between the age of 14 and 24, the earlier we engage our younger people in that, the more positive we are. Recreating city, if you remember, in the 70s, there was a lot of social halls in Nairobi.
The social halls everywhere in the country,
Everywhere.
especially where you had a town,
Yes.
which was considered to be the headquarter of the province.
It had to have a social hall.
It had to have a social hall.
Yes. And clubs.
Yes.
Nairobi has 21.
Yes. So the addiction, essentially, if you remember, we talked about the coping mechanisms. Yeah? So with all these buildings, the pressures of life, paying rent. I think there was a time I was in California, and I met some serious people in addiction field, and they kept telling me, Boniface, when you go back home, please try and figure out from the proverbs you talk about what's some of the solutions our African people had for this, because they were very rooted in our African culture and engaged, and there was a lot of insights and a lot of in-depth knowledge that supported people to have an identity of who they are. So now here we have a younger generation of people. They grew up in places like this, you can imagine. There are blocks of flats. There is no connection to your history. Wanting to change how you feel becomes a very important component of yeah?
Yeah. Let's take a break at this point. It's 7:30. This is Kenya's biggest conversation at the Situation Room. Boniface NDIRANGU is here with us in the studio. Boniface is the chairman of the Addictions Prevention and Rehabilitation Association of Kenya. We're having a conversation today in commemoration of yesterday's International Day Against Drug Abuse and Illicit Trafficking, which was commemorated yesterday, and that's why we're having a conversation.
This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day.
We continue the conversation with Boniface NDIRANGU from the Addictions Prevention and Rehabilitation Association of Kenya, talking about how we can deal with especially the prevention side and the treatment, right? So, City had asked you, what do you do to make sure that you delay the onset of people starting to abuse? And then how do you create that awareness of when does somebody know that they have actually crossed? Is it possible for someone to know that the way I've been drinking, I'm a social drink? You know, people say, I'm a social drink. I mean, I just meet with my pals. We have a drink or two, or we smoke up, or one do the other. When does someone know that at the rate I'm going, I'm about to cross, or I've just crossed the line?
Yeah, thank you. We have a very quick test. I can help maybe do that. Maybe I should do it with no.
It's your birthday.
Have you ever tried to cut down on your drinking?
Have I ever tried to?
Cut down on the drinking?
I didn't know that I was at a point where I needed to.
Yeah.
Have you ever told yourself, I need to reduce my drinking?
No.
Nah.
I reduced mine.
Did you think that you needed to?
Oh, no, I knew. I wasn't thinking.
There might have been a force of nature that made
No,
me
I
realize.
knew I had to reduce it. Just like I knew I had to stop smoking. When you wake up in the middle of the night and your chest is so clogged up, you can't breathe. You can barely breathe. Something's wrong. And you know, this one, it's the cigarette that is causing it.
There's nothing as better than a self-assessment. If you're assessing yourself and you think, hey, God, I need to stop. Just like you're saying, this is getting into my health. That tells you that in your own system, in your own analysis of yourself, that you need to cut down. Yeah. So anyone who is listening and has thought that, oh, maybe I need to cut down on this, maybe.
So you know.
That's number one.
So you know.
Yes. You know.
Intuitively, you know that this is too much.
Yes. Your body knows a lot of what's not good for itself. Yeah. And when you feel and think that I need to start cutting down, you know that's a self-assessment that comes from inside you. 2, have you been annoyed with yourself or angry with yourself for how much you drank last night, or what happened after you drank last night, or the influence of alcohol in your life? If you have, that's something you can sit with and feel like, oh God, what did I do last night? Oh man, that's really
That was dumb.
gross.
That was too much.
Yourself, we mwenyewe. You had a meeting with your hangover and you think, God, no.
Took yourself behind the tent.
It's not meat like this.
It's another sign.
Yes, that's another sign. And of course, when loved ones start to get concerned, you hear your girlfriend mention. I personally, the first person was my girlfriend at the time, 19, and she, usually they're the first people to feel the brunt.
What
of
did she tell you?
She just tried to tell me that maybe this is not. Yesterday was really rough. I'm getting concerned. And I brushed it off. Huh? Yes.
But you're out with her.
Yes.
You're having fun with
Well,
her.
I had to be taken back. Those days we used to go to Visions. I don't know whether you lived in my. So I think I had to be taken back for
you're
them
in
to come
Vision-
back now to hang and have a good time.
You had to be taken back to campus.
Yes, to
The
sleep.
hostel.
So that guys can have a party.
Right.
Yeah, it was a mess.
So she told you this
Yeah,
is it's too much.
Yes. That, I think, is when my friends started
Now
getting
here's the
concerned.
thing, though.
Yeah.
When your friends and loved ones express their concern, many people actually brush it off, like you said.
Yes.
How many times do you have to brush it off before it actually just sinks in?
Well, personally, I don't think I just started avoiding those friends now.
So let me ask the question:
Yes.
why do you brush it aside?
Yes. Oh yeah, that's nice. Now that's how addiction really happens. Now the substance, starts. We start to block mentally. Our minds are built in such a way. That's deep psychology. We start to block things that are unpleasant to ourselves. That's how denial starts to creep in. Yeah, starts to creep in that way. You want to block. You want to not think things that will make you feel bad. So you start to develop a denial system of blocking. It's deeply psychological.
Let me ask this
Psychological,
question.
yes.
You see, the blocking,
Yes.
they are the lies we tell people.
Yes.
They're the lies we tell ourselves. Okay? But what you seem to be describing is a point where you start lying to yourself.
Yes.
You don't even admit to yourself.
Yes.
You won't even allow yourself to admit. That's why I asked the question, so what is it, if not an acknowledgement that you actually have a problem?
Yes. Yes. Now that the reverse, you are by your behavior, by your denial behavior, you are
You're demonstrating acknowledgement that I actually have a problem, and I fear to admit it to myself. So you'll deny it vociferously to anybody who would like, who you think might even hear.
Do you think that in order to admit the problem to those who may love you and care for you, in order for that to happen, you must admit it to yourself first?
Well, sometimes there are people who come into treatment before they even accept that. They see it once the denial has been simpered down by lack of drink and some treatment over time. Then they start to see it within 21 days. So they can come in without. Of course, there are those who... Now, we move to the last question and then we continue this. The last thing, we've looked at three main things. We've looked at cutting down the feelings around it. We've looked at a loved one's concern.
Yes.
The last one is if you start to need to stabilize in the morning. Like I saw you a little coffee and I really wanted it.
It's actually tea.
It's true, yeah?
Yes.
Yeah, I'm a coffee person these days. So even when I came in, I looked at, I wanted some coffee.
Yes.
So when in the morning, and you feel like you need to stabilize, your hands are a little shaky.
When you say stabilize, what are we saying here
Yeah,
exactly?
you need to be like the way you are now. For you to be
You need an
to
injection.
function.
need some-
Yes, you need
Okay.
to have a drink.
Do there's something they
cheese.
call unlocking.
Yes, kutoa lock. Inakaa unajua hii maneno siti.
Do you get that sometimes with tea? Like you need coffee in the morning, like to jumpstart your day.
Yeah.
Okay.
Now the booze you needed the alcohol to be able to do that.
Yes, there's some some people who can't even stand up to give a press conference or talk, and that's why that lady carries that thing in the morning. That lady you are telling me about, I think we are not on air then. She carries it. Or there's some even politicians who can't speak in public without having a drink. Yeah.
You need to stabilize.
You need to stabilize.
Okay.
In fact, if they did not, you feel sorry for them. In fact, we get to a point where there was a time my sisters had agreed that I should quit using. and I was really hanging in there not to use. But how I was so shaky and hurting, the withdrawals were so strong that they would go and buy for me my illegal drugs.
Really?
Yes,
But it's sometimes
they are supportive, but then they turn around and
you can
want
see
to.
that
Yes,
this person is
person is
actually
suffering.
sick.
yes, sick.
Without
And
this
yes,
thing.
yes.
Wow. That really is a wow moment.
Now that's
So-
the last stage.
You know, even as we're looking at these solutions, I mean, again, so how bad is it in the country in terms of statistics? How bad a situation are we looking at here? And how many, if you were to give numbers, if you had them, that if we're looking at, in every 10 people, who then has an issue or who is likely to have an issue with drug abuse?
Alcohol and drug abuse, yes.
Alcohol and drug abuse, yes.
Addiction. Yeah, we do. And by the way, now it's growing, yeah? Because, if you remember our addictions, we are saying addictions. It's not just addiction. And a lot of times these days, you're looking at alcohol and drugs, substance
Together.
abuse, yeah? However, the addictions now cropping up.
Like,
Yeah? Oh, yeah. Internet.
right.
Yes, internet addiction in China has become one of the most, with the switching off spaces, internet. Just if you're a parent, you probably get to know that our kids are beginning to be very compulsive, and these are the two key things about addiction: compulsive and obsessive about anything. When you're compulsive and obsessive, an obsession of the mind and a compulsion. So these addictions, you'll find there is internet addiction, there is addiction of gambling and betting, yeah. There is food, there is pornography, there is sex addiction, and some people sex and love addiction go almost together. So you'll find that
Addicted to
yes,
love.
To
yes,
love,
yes.
sorry. I do, okay.
Huh?
You're addicted to affection. You constantly want.
Yes. Yeah, it's a feeling. You're not in
You
love,
see,
really.
When you talk about love, in essence, what you're talking about is a relationship. When you're addicted to love, it is not a relationship that you're looking for. You're looking for a feeling. You're
That's
looking
why
for.
in
You're
Japan
looking
they
for
have,
a.
like, the petting
Yes.
zoos,
You're looking for a
not petting
high.
zoo, like the hug cubicles.
Yes.
Yeah, it's a
Yeah,
thing.
yeah.
It's actually a thing.
Yes.
Wow.
So yes, now when you look at those numbers, now we're talking about 10% of the population in the averages around the world. These are researches which have been done around. So that's in Kenya is about 4 million.
That's a
people.
lot.
Yes. But the people who are, and there are stages, it's a progressive thing.
Yeah.
So the stages. So what we are talking about the 400,000 people who need treatment are the ones we are talking about eye-opening, the ones who need the last stage. So these 4 questions we talked about, if you answer 4 out of 4, there's a 90% chance that it has 90% success rate around the world. A very simple test.
Yeah.
To tell you whether you have a problem. If you score 4 out of 4, even 3 out of 4,
You need to be in a
Need to
rehab.
be in.
yes.
What happens? Sorry, Eric, I know
Go
you
on.
asked. What happens in a rehab center?
Oh, good.
For example, you finally agree to go, or by force, or whatever. What happens in terms of treatment then from day one?
Yes. Now, depending on where you are at in your stage, we do some tests like this. This is a cage test. There are quite a number of other tests that you get to get the details, and you develop something called an individualized treatment plan for this particular person. It's not global for everyone. So there are certain people who will need, if they're in that stage where they were in physically addicted to a substance, they'll need some help, medical help to detox. Certain people, very few. Yeah, and detox, sometimes people misconstrue it to be a very complex process, but it isn't. It's just that your body is getting back into
You're weaning
some
the body
status.
out
Yes,
of.
yes. So
So
withdrawal
do you-
management, really.
So do you give the person in smaller doses as you reduce?
Depending on what they're using, because also the addicts of prescription medications, they will need to be on the same medication but tapered down.
Okay.
Yeah, there's some prescription medications that people are addicted to that you will need the same class of medication that has less addictive properties.
Okay.
So, and that is usually done by the medical setting. So the first 4 to 7 days, that is what goes on. Mostly, even these people who come in who don't need that, or some people who are, their body can go through natural detox because your body can. That is in first stage, and that is the biological component of stabilization.
Let me ask this question.
Yes, please.
When you are a young person
Yes.
and you are smoking or drinking, with your peers, what status did it give you?
Oh, it's the coolest guy now, even. Yeah, that's
Precisely. The allure and what pulls you to it is not the substance itself, but it's what it gives you. The external factor, which is actually fairly internalized. Because even when you talk about drinking and people who get addicted to drink, it starts off as something you take for fun, the buzz it gives you, but then also you then become a champion as to how much you can consume. So there's a silent and salient competition. You know, this person can drink a whole bottle of this. This one can drink half a bottle of this. Again, it's status. Now, when you're young, you are not cognizant of the damage. Not really. It doesn't feature in your mind. It probably features when the damage is actually there and you can feel the damage. And that's why when NDIRANGU talked about peer, in the absence of the peer pressure and encouragement, addiction is almost impossible, because addiction has to happen within a setting where that habit is either overtly or covertly encouraged. Yes.
Yes, that is one. There are others also who, out of pain, trauma. Trauma has been a serious cause of many, especially when I get young people come to see me. Very young people, you see, a 19-year-old girl or a 21-year-old boy, and they're already addicted. What do you mean? It's just, and they're only drinking alcohol. What's going on here? You try and figure out, you'll find the relationship between that girl probably with her father, or there is something to do with some trauma, death in the family, divorce, trauma, childhood trauma has become a serious correlation between addictive behaviors and substance abuse.
Yeah.
With that
age group.
Yes.
But you know, this is cyclical. You know why? Yeah? If you look at the parents of these young people, you'll find that they themselves have issues.
Very deep.
Starts from home.
Oh, yes. They never got over the issues that they had.
Yes.
So when they get married, they have children, they carry that baggage with them.
We need to break that cycle. Those are the programs we need to
And
really
isn't it
have
because,
breakfast.
I mean, society, I mean, maybe you can, societies, especially here, we are not talking societies, are not sharing communities, really, in terms of opening your mouth to talk about what's going on with you without realizing how much of an impact it can really have on your well-being, mentally, psychologically, right? So here we are talking about the $1 prevention, preventative care that would then possibly be able to topple over $100 curative care.
Yes.
And I'm seeing a situation whereby if we're encouraging people to talk about their issues, talk about whatever it is at the age of 9, at the age of 8, and overturning now this cyclical issue that we've seen. If your father was not speaking about issues that he had when he was younger, if your mother was not speaking about them, the likelihood of you speaking about them as a child and you speaking about them to your own children then is weakened considerably. So isn't that one of the solutions, that we need to have talking societies whereby you're sharing? It doesn't necessarily have to come, I'm downloading all my problems on Eric, but that, you know, I'm talking about this is what happened to me the other day, this is how I feel about a certain thing. Even in as much as we're encouraging people to talk, we're also encouraging people to be adequate receptors of this information that's coming from people. If I come to you to talk today and you push me aside, the likelihood of me coming tomorrow is relatively less. Shouldn't those be some of the areas
I
we're
think
going?
I really think and they are beginning to. I think there's something that is coming up, like Nakada has come up with a parental program. I feel that's a really cool one, but you see, these things are communal, so we need to have I have always thought that even people before they get married or have children, I think people should just go to school, man. People need to go through a course.
proper.
Yes.
That reminds me,
Yeah.
you told us about your friends who told you when you go back home, find out how they did it in the traditional African society. How did they do it?
Yes. Yeah, Africans, we really need to fix it to saidia hapo kidogo.
You see, it's not complicated at some level. Huh? If you take the fact that we are social creatures, a traditional African setting, everybody literally knew your business. And everybody in that community was related to you in one way or the other. But there were set structures, age groups, what have you.
Yeah.
So there was a system that gave you a clear sense of belonging.
Sure.
Now, in an urban setting, you have a clear sense of alienation. You have to work at creating this community. And that's why people go to churches, people go to mosques, people are in chamas. These are signs of human beings needing that collectivity. When it's there and it's understood, many of these issues which could have been in a particular setting with a family is resolved because other people will get into it. A problem with your father had brothers and cousins, you go to them. They would come and sort out the issue. But when you have a setting where you dare not tell off your neighbor's child, tell off, you dare not. Now, if
For scratching your car.
writing on your car, your nicely painted vehicle that has cost you God knows what.
What city has just put? There's a guy in Portugal, Johannes. He's if you watch him on YouTube, he says all we know about addiction is the lack of connection. That all these other stories are theories. The real problem is that the connection. People have lost a connection. We've become disconnected with, and we are trying to use something to
fill
get
the
that
gap.
connection, and we can't feel it. So, some people in the States, they call it our addiction, the hole in the donut that you will never feel.
The donut will remain the donut.
Yes. So, we try to fill it with more sex, more drugs, more alcohol, more money, more power, more. You are missing something. You're trying to figure out how I started using heroin myself, which is that feeling that heroin gave me. I felt like, oh God, this is what I've been looking for. Almost like a spiritual feeling.
Only problem is
Yes.
it's temporary.
Yes.
And then
You'll
you
have
have to
to
go and
feel
get another fix.
Dies down and then you have to reboot.
And at the
Yes.
time, you need more.
So Africa tulikuwa na hiyo wanasema we had a
Community.
lot of that community, a sense of identity. We had a connection with our roots. This life we are living has a lot of pressure.
I mean, recall, why is it, for instance, that they appeared in modern terms, you call it pressure, on someone who was educated to look after the interest of others? Because people went to study because of community assistance. People collected money for people to go and study abroad.
Yes.
Now, when you came back in the days when jobs were aplenty and they came a calling, it was then you were beholden to employ people and to find. You see, it was all community.
So the question would be now, Siti,
Yes.
how can we, in this urban setting and in the circumstances that we find ourselves in, how can we refine and bring some efforts towards bringing that connection of people? Not necessarily going back because it's impossible. But how do we find a common space where you have an identity as a Kenyan?
A modern traditional way.
Yeah.
You start by talking about it.
Number one.
Yes, like we are doing.
Like we are doing today.
Yes.
And like we'll invite you
And
to
that-
come and do again.
Oh, yeah.
And again. Boniface. Thank you very much for coming in today.
Yeah.
Boniface NDIRANGU is the chairman of the Addictions Prevention and Rehabilitation Association of Kenya. Thank you for all the insights that you've shared with us. Come again soon.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
And now that you've been watching us, keep watching.
I do.
Tuma salamu in
Yeah.
30 seconds.
Yeah.
Eh?
Salamu natumia all my friends in Association of Rehab Centers across the country, and keep doing what you do. And thank you for the efforts that you have done to help our country.
Asante sana.